Hello and welcome to this episode of the Dead Man Walking podcast. I am your host, Repeatedly Dead Fred, author of the medical trauma memoir, The Summer I Died 20 Times, which is what actually happened to me, and that's how I got the name Repeatedly Dead Fred. Today, I am here with the fascinating Chris Buckley, and Chris has a story that I've never heard before. I wish I heard more stories like this, and Chris has been through it, man. No other way to say it. He's really been through it and come out on the other side, just a gem of a person and contributing back to the world. So, Chris, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Look forward to doing it for most of the week since I started corresponding with you. I was like, man, this could be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to it. So
Oh, I'm glad. So I guess we don't have to go all the way back to your birth, but and offline we were just talking about how 2024 got off to a bit of a rocky start with you, with
yeah.
your eye getting scratched and stuff like that. But I think your whole life got off to a little bit of a rocky start. Do you want to give us a short synopsis of what happened?
Yes. So just the skinny of it was, I come from a really poor family, not unlike so many other people in this country that really just didn't have the means or the ways to do the things that we wanted to be able to do as kids, or that our parents wanted to do for us. I mean, I think about the new blue jeans I got were actually third generation hand me down corduroys that
Mhm.
the ribs had been worn off of. So by the time I got them, they were denim. Um,
And they didn't make that swoosh swoosh sound
no,
anymore.
no. When my cousins got them brand new, they would, then the next kid gets them in there, and then the third kid gets them in there, and by the time I get them, they're just blue jeans, man. Like, I mean, the ribs are worn off. Uh, but I mean, I remember visiting food banks, and my mom worked two jobs, my dad was gone all the time working, and you know, I grew up in Cleveland in the mid '90s, so like I was involved in this whole like busing segregation type of
Mhm.
school board thing where somebody got this great idea to like, let's bus 150 kids from the east side to the west and west side to the east. And so I got to experience racism firsthand. I know
Mhm.
it's not really, it doesn't fit the narrative in the country for a white kid to say that he was the
Right.
victim of racial bullying. But hey, that's my story, man. And then I get I was molested as a kid by a same-sex family member.
Mhm.
So I grew up hating homosexuality and everything that I thought that it represented and stood for. And the only other time I have ever felt that much hatred or animosity in my life was when my comrade lost his life in Afghanistan.
Mhm.
Um, Man, I come home from Afghanistan in 2009, in March of 2009. In May of 2009, I broke my back in a vehicle training accident. And so, welcome to the wild, wonderful world of opiate painkillers. The
Yeah.
doctors, it was in that era where they're over prescribing everything, especially in Kentucky, West Virginia, super forgotten places of the world like that. I got I broke my L1, L2, and L3 compression. It just, the swelling is what held everything together. And they gave me 180 Oxycontin 80s 3 times a month, like with so three refills on that 180 a month. Um, Needless to say, within the first month, I was hooked. I mean, like I was eating them like candy.
Mhm.
Um, that progressively led to bigger and harder drugs because I started to realize that on the opiates I didn't feel anything, and then I experimented with heroin because the opiates, and eventually that turned into methamphetamines, cocaine, just everything you can imagine, man. And I there's nothing I haven't done out there drug wise, and so that just led to more horrible freaking life decisions, man. And this drug fueled hatred of what I perceived was everybody else was really a drug filled hatred and embarrassment and shame of myself. And I had to go through it. right? And you hear people say all the time, it's like, man, old buddy's going through it. We don't know
Mhm.
what it is, but hey, he's going through it. And then
Yeah.
that was me, man. And I found myself at my lowest, severely addicted to every single drug you can imagine, and involved with deep ties to a hate group, man. And
Okay.
you
So
know,
before we get to that, can we take a step back, please? So even though you had had this rough childhood, and your dad wasn't around, and we know all the stats for not having a strong father figure around, and everything like that, you ended up in Afghanistan for a really good reason.
I
And
mean,
when you went,
allegedly, allegedly, I mean,
allegedly,
I mean,
but you weren't at that point. You weren't the bitter, anger fueled person that you
yeah.
turned. Like you were still a relatively good person
You know what, man?
until
Like
that incident.
I still had the anger and the bitterness. It was controlled chaos at that point. And I think
Mhm.
that the traumas of combat coupled with, the mental health deterioration when I come home, the substance abuse, add that layer in there. I think it just kind of like weakened the gates and just like let a lot of
Sure.
things kind of come to the surface.
Mhm. Were you married when you enlisted?
No, I was
No.
see, there was a lot of like survival guilt
Mhm.
with my comrade who fell. He was engaged, he had a baby, he had another
Uh-huh.
one on the way. Here I am, single, 20 something, nothing to lose, all my oats, I'm sowing them. Like I have no ties,
Mhm.
and like I really went through a period where like I was suicidal and I wanted to end my life because I felt like I was robbed of that glorious death in battle, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah. There's a lot of that martyr marketing going on.
I don't think it was so much as that. It's just like, for a long time I've really bought into the Viking culture, you know,
Mhm.
and what better place to be than Valhalla, and that's the way to get there is to die in glorious battle.
Mhm.
I hear a lot of people laugh when I say that I believe in the old gods, and I'm always curious when they're like, "Oh, that's preposterous," and it's like, but we believe in a magic guy that lives in the sky that walked on water and rose from the dead. Like it's no more preposterous than that.
Right.
And they're both make believe, and somebody's one person's make believe is something that gets another person through. So
So would you consider yourself, and this isn't an area I usually delve into, but are you agnostic? Are you any sort of religious now? Any sort of
and
belief
no,
system?
I look at all the major conflict and death and destruction in the world, and it's 100% religion based.
Mhm.
So I tend to stay away from the cultist type of congregations. I would, if I had to identify as anything, it would totally be atheist. I mean, like
Mhm.
the burden of proof isn't on the atheist at this
Mhm.
point. You know what I mean? It's like let's look at the logic and rationality of religion. And when people say, "Oh, well, that's where faith comes in," and it's like, yeah, well, every single lemming behind the one that jumps off the cliff has blind faith too, and we see where it gets
Mhm.
that. So
Okay. So you come back, you've had a horrible experience, you've
yeah.
dramatically, tragically lost a close friend. And are you in touch with that friend's family anymore? Or is that a
No,
little
man,
too
I
hard?
like it's really tough, man. It's one of those things where every time I'm in Kentucky, I stop and visit the gravesite.
Mhm.
Um, but I've it's really hard for me to maintain that contact.
For sure. I can understand that. So what about your own family that, the relative that molested you and your father and stuff like that? You've made so many great strides in other areas of your life that we'll talk about that I'm sure will shock a lot of the people watching or listening.
Yeah.
Have you been able to make any progress with that?
Look, so when I come back, my dad was really confused about PTSD and substance abuse, and
Mhm.
he just didn't know what to do. My dad's old school, man. He's a guy's guy. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I will just sheer willpower and force my way through anything. And he didn't know what to do. And like
Hmm.
because of that, because of me, like this was the first time I'd ever like I didn't know what to do. So
Right.
because of that, our relationship really deteriorated and we didn't speak for probably 7 years.
Hmm.
Um, like my son's 12 now, and I think the last time he and my son spent any time together was probably around the time my son was, 2 or 3. And
Hmm.
I just I hit a point in my life where I was like, I have got to make the amends. Like I'm at a point where I'm healthy in my life and there's a lot of things that I went through that I was like, I just want to call my dad. I want to call my dad. And everybody was always telling me like, just call him. And I was like, I can't. And I don't know if it was I couldn't because I pardon my language, but I had fucked up so bad that I
Hmm.
just like I couldn't forgive myself. So how could I expect somebody else to forgive me?
Hmm.
And in that time I would also look at my own son and I would be like, I could never not love you and forgive you. Like, no matter what, dude, come home.
Yeah.
Come here and like I don't care what you've done, nothing is gonna shadow my love for you. And then I had that epiphany that like, yeah, my dad probably feels the same way. And I got his number from my mom that we had started talking and rebuilding our
Hmm.
relationship and I just sent him a text and I said, I love you, Dad, and I'm sorry. And I got a text back and like we've really been working on our relationship the last few months. So that's a beautiful
That's amazing.
yeah. The uncle that molested me is still free, and I've tried to pursue the charges according to that. But
Hmm.
in Ohio, there is a statute of limitations,
Sure.
and there's nothing that can be done now at this age. And this guy has another boyfriend now who has a young kid that's in the house with him. So I'm 100% positive that this kid's getting molested, and my heart breaks to know that I'm
Hmm.
not the only one, and I'm probably not going to be the last.
Yeah. There needs to be a severe reset on many things in both our countries. 'Cause I'm in Canada, you're obviously in the US, but
Yeah.
the statute of limitations for things like sexual assault
Should never
has,
expire.
yeah.
It might take somebody 40 years to get the courage up to face their attacker. When you're 5 and that person is like your boogeyman, it takes some time to build that courage and be like, I'm a man now and I can face this with courage. And who's to say that you get 7 years at 5 years old? 7 years is only, what, 13, 12?
Yeah. When people were only living to 40 or 45 years, that 7 year limitation was forever.
Yeah.
Now it's just not. Doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. It needs a revision. But I'm glad that you started the reconciliation with your father. I know that's a very, very difficult thing to do.
It's
So,
fulfilling, man. Like when something cool happens, I can call my dad, and that
mhm,
means a lot. I get emotional just thinking about how much time I spent being so sure that I was right, and I was wrong, man. So like, if anybody out there is wondering, like, can I call? Should I call? Fucking call, man. Like they're
mhm,
dying for that phone call. They need that phone
mhm.
call as much as you do, man. Pick up that phone, and if you don't want to hear the voice or you're nervous, man, send the text. That'll just start the process. It's not about who started it, who started it's just about making the repair, man. Life's too short, and like we all need our family.
Yeah, and it's great that your dad, even though he's so old school, that he could, he's the guy's guy, but he still texts.
Yeah, well, he's still dad.
Yeah.
He's
So
still dad.
okay, so that's a pretty good foundation for where you are right now.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about the amazing part of your story, or the amazing part to me. Um, the story, is it Kevo? Is that how he pronounced his name?
Of
Kevo
all,
Kelly? Yeah, Kelly, Dr. Kelly, the cardiologist.
yeah.
the most unlikely best friend for you in your state coming back from Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Because there's probably nothing on earth you hated more than a Muslim.
I'm telling you, if there was, I hadn't found it yet. I think the closest thing would be a homosexual.
Okay. So, so the, and again, another area I don't really delve into, but the gays for Palestine must just blow your mind.
I can't. I mean, like, I'm not against it. Like,
Mhm.
but you know what it is, like, man, to me, like, it's Western gays. Like, it's North American gays,
Mhm.
right? And to me, like, it just doesn't, like, I don't know if they know that they're not really like their favorite people over there. You know what I mean? Like, I just,
Yeah.
like, I'm not knocking it. Like, hey, look, I'm one of those weird people that are going to be like, I'm for Palestinians because they are severely oppressed by, Hamas.
Mhm.
And I'm also for the Israelis' right to defend themselves. I'm an American. That's the most American shit ever. Is like, hey,
Mhm.
somebody punches you back. Jesus said turn the other cheek, but Jesus was Middle Eastern. I'm gonna punch you in the cheek, and we're gonna get it going. You
Mhm.
know, you we will hit you 10 times what you hit
Okay.
us, and that's that American way of life. It's just who we are, man. And people don't have to like it. Who cares? That's why we're the greatest country in the world.
Mhm.
It's in North America. Canada, our brothers up north and sisters. Where we dominate the world because
Mhm.
of that motto. Like, we will fight. We will go through extreme measures of violence to eradicate somebody that harms our beloved citizens. And if we have that right, every country has that right. Every man has that right. We set up those rights and principles but I mean, like, I just think that I'm just gonna say it, man. I think it's identity politics. I think it's like, how
Mhm.
can we become like more relevant than we already are? Oh, well,
Mhm.
we're now not just gays for like LGBTQ issues and things. Now we're gays for Palestine. In 1940, they would have been the ones that, like, we're gays for Hitler, right?
Mhm.
Like, just to say whatever to just be relevant.
Yeah, it's like I saw a meme the other day. Chickens for KFC.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same thing. And
Mhm.
and what it is it's people get us as people, right? The species itself are very, very influenced. Like we can be influenced super easy. It's just, you put people in silos, they echo chamber these ideas back and forth, and no matter how irrational, unlogical, like, it doesn't make any sense, it's truth.
Mhm.
But we live in a world where multiple truths can be held, and nobody's right or wrong. Two people can have opposite views and still both be right. And that's what's
Mhm.
beautiful is
Mhm.
is allowing people to have those views. And as long as the gays don't start supporting Hamas, I think we'll be okay.
So you got caught up in one of those echo chambers,
Yeah.
and I've never met anyone who also got caught up in one of those echo chambers. I don't think that group is prevalent in Canada. You might
I don't I
know.
don't think so. I think Canada is dealing with the version of that group that's been rebranded. So because of like the ADL and SOPOP law and doxing and all this other internet-based stuff, it's really easy to keep track of who's like KKK members.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is you guys have groups like Diagolon and Goyim Defense League and things like that are basically like militia style versions of the KKK. They hate anything that isn't white, Christian, and nationalist.
Yeah. So how did you get into the KKK? Like I said, I've never met anybody who has.
Man, I went to a
Um,
Taco Tuesday luncheon and we went bowling. No, no, man.
well, because you just had to knock down those white pins, or
Yeah, and that's all it's about, I mean, like, we can't stand bowling because, that's where the black ball knocks down the white pins. And I'll tell you, during my time in the Klan, I would only eat chicken nuggets because that's the only real all white meat. And no, so I was going through a period where like life was really freaking hard. I was dealing with untreated and undiagnosed at the time mental health issues.
Mhm.
Co-occurring at the same time was the substance abuse disorder. On top of that, like I had all this trauma that I was trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And because of that, I couldn't get a good job, mainly because I couldn't pass a drug test and I wasn't reliable to show up. I didn't have transportation. I was living as an addict at my rock bottom. Um, it was hard to get assistance. They said that we didn't qualify for food stamps or health care, whatever, programs that the government had for us. And, just like I remember there was one Christmas specific where there wasn't a damn thing under the Christmas tree. Like it was
Mhm.
so bad on Christmas Eve that I threw a Christmas tree in the yard. And I said, this is dumb. Like, I don't want to celebrate. And,
Mhm.
like that feeling as a father, and I know there's a lot of listeners out there that are going to be like, well, look at what you were doing. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It was problems of my own making, but there was also other extenuating circumstances that played into that. And I was linked up with a guy who we were using buddies, right? Like we were doing drugs
Mhm.
together, and he was like super racist and like he was like, dude, you know why you can't get a good job because these damn illegals are coming over here, border
Mhm.
hopping and taking the jobs working for pennies on the dollar, and they don't have to charge them taxes, so the company makes more. And it's like after a while, like it's just like your decision making is just like diminished, and you're like, yeah,
Right.
you're right. And then it's like, let me tell you about the Jews. And oh, by the way, man, here's here's the money for your electric bill, bro. And me and the boys, we chipped in, and here's some Christmas presents for your kids and some
Mhm.
groceries to put in your house. And it was like, fuck. That was the first time anybody had ever helped me. Um,
Yeah.
and then he's like, hey, the day after Christmas, he called and he was like, hey man, you need a job? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I need a job. He was like, all right, you go start work with me and my dad Monday.
Mhm.
Cool. So I start like this is a real friend. This guy's looking out for me. Like, I mean, what's the better definition of a true friend? And then he's like, hey man, me and the guys are gonna go hang out. You wanna come with us? You'll be my guest. This is like a private kind of club, we'd like to bring you in, but the guys want to meet you. So we went to a barbecue, man, and like had a big family day. And then I found out like fuck, man, the Klan's been helping me out this whole time. And it just seemed like one of those things where it was like, you want to join? And I was like, shit, you guys are doing this for me and I'm not a member. Like, yeah, let's go. And you
Mhm.
get in there and you realize that it's just a drug riddled, like just a play. When I say sex, drugs, and rock and roll was the lifestyle, that was a lifestyle, And so, you build a camaraderie with these guys. That kind of substituted that camaraderie that I was missing after I got out of the service. And like, it's just a place to just like dwell in this self hatred and project that hatred out onto other people using
Mhm.
this idea of your perceived grievances.
Mhm. Yeah, it's that old game of winning hearts and minds.
Hearts and minds, blood and guts, either way, you get the same result.
Mhm. So, how long were you caught up in that?
So I was I was controlling my substance use enough throughout my military career. In 2013, when I ETS'd, I went full-fledged in. I wouldn't do the two at the same time because
Mhm.
of, operational reasons, and there's policies and stuff that would open me up to a whole bunch of punishment. So
Mhm.
I was kind of closet racisting a little bit
Mhm.
and bigot and just all that, like right towards the end of my military career. So I'd say April-ish, May. of 2013. I was a full patch member. Um, and then I stayed in until the end of 2016 in the Refuge documentary. You can see, Arno Michaelis is co-subject in that documentary, and he was the one who helped me leave the movement and get out and start to repair my life. And we started doing that towards the end of 2016. So three
Why don't you
years.
give a yeah, why don't you give a quick plug to the documentary?
Yeah. So Refuge, the movie, was released in March of last year. And it is the story you were talking earlier about Dr. Kelly, the cardiologist here in Atlanta at Northside Hospital, who I met through Arno Michaela. So Refuge 2023 is the story of that meeting and the bond and the growth of our friendship to this point. And you know, it come about because at the time of Charlottesville, the producers Aaron Bernhardt and Den Blankenship really wanted to do something to counter the narrative of like what was going on. It was all set around their alma mater and the school there. So they was like, we're gonna make a documentary about Clarkston, Georgia, which is the most diverse square mile in the US. Like over 170 nationalities and languages, and like there's so they started following Dr. Kelly and a bunch of other people. And in the process of that, Arno had connected us. And he was like, hey, I'm going to go meet this KKK guy who's not in the KKK anymore. Do you guys want to come with? And they were like, yeah. So they come with, and they filmed our first initial meeting. And
Mhm.
uh, what happened was they sent the cuts to the producers, and the producers were like, what is this? They were like, oh, this is when he went. They was like, no, this is the documentary. Scrap everything else. This is the new documentary. You found your track. And we spent the next 2 or 3 years initially filming, and another year shooting edits, and they did such an amazing job with the film, man. It was an amazing story, and I can't wait for everybody to see it. It's on Vudu, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and Google Play.
So
And
are you get
if you're on Delta, I think you can watch it free on your Delta flights till
okay?
March.
So are you getting hammered now to be like stand-ins for Brad Pitt and roles like that?
Man, I wish. I think I get a lot of requests for podcasts, um, interviews, for stuff like that. I've done a lot. Like if you put my name into Google, just like type in Chris Buckley, former extremist, there's a lot of stuff, pages of that come up, like Washington Post, People Magazine, uh, let's see, New York Times. Like that's just some of the more, Fox News, CNN. I've got some op-eds out. I've done some spots, and then just a lot of videos out there for like local news and stuff. But I think the coolest thing that's happened is one of my favorite artists, and I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it openly. I'm just gonna say
Okay.
my favorite artist.
Well, hang on. Let's anybody watching or listening, remember this is on the down low, so you can't tell people.
Yeah, but one of my favorite artists found out about my story and sent me, well, his manager sent me an email and was like, hey, this person wants to send you a care package and bring you to the show the next time he's in Knoxville or Nashville. So that was, man, that was just amazing to know that somebody I idolize is aware of my existence. I mean,
Mhm.
I think the only other way to describe it would be like a teenage girl finding out that Taylor Swift knows who she is.
Mhm.
Like one of those sweet, like I'm just like fanboyed out, dude. Like it's super cool.
So do you play any instruments or do you sing?
I don't, man. I don't. I just music is a love language for me though, because
Mhm.
I'm learning to deal with my emotions and talk about my feelings. And sometimes I can't figure out how to say what I feel and convey that message effectively. And music is a very powerful way for me to express and communicate like how I'm feeling at a given time. So like you can usually listen to what I'm listening to and get a sense of how I'm feeling by that. So
Mhm. So let's talk about the amazing Dr. Kelly, who should be on
dude needs a
your.
Nobel Peace Prize. Like Kelly for president 2024, like get him on a ballot, dude. I'd vote for him. He's my hero.
Mhm. The most unlikely, a practicing Muslim,
Yeah.
and total antithesis of what 5 years ago you could have seen in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been amazing, man. Um to to meet the thing that you are most afraid of, right?
Mhm.
And to learn to understand it is a game changer in life, man. Like when I think back, it wasn't Muslims represented everything that I was afraid of. I was afraid of war. Like anybody that's been to combat that says they weren't afraid is a liar. Like
Mhm.
it happens. And when I come home, like that fear just stayed with me, and it was like a obsession that like as men, especially soldiers, we're trained that anything that you're afraid of, you should kill it. Whether it be that 10-mile ruck march, go out there and kill it, or the enemy, kill it. And that gives you dominance over it. And I responded for a long time with that violence that if I fear something and I respond to it with a higher level of violence, then I will be safe regardless because
Mhm.
violence keeps me safe. And to meet this guy and to see him step out of his comfort and safety zone, going off of just my word that I had changed and that I wasn't like gonna kidnap him and kill him or anything, bring harm to him. Drives all pardon me, all the way from Atlanta to meet me, and then he brings my kids gifts as tradition in Kurdish culture, and when I think about Haval, I think about like what he represents for the Muslim community. But not only that, like this guy he represents the Kurdish community.
Mhm.
And you know, this guy, like he's my best friend, man. Like we realized really quick, like we're the same age. Like 10 days after 9/11, he gets told that he's been selected for the United States. And people ask him all the time, this is his joke, but I'm gonna tell it because it's funny. So they always say, how did you end up in Georgia? And he said that when they went in front of their caseworker for asylum from Syria when they fled, that they said, where do you want to go? And he had spent so much time in Germany that it was so cold, snowy. He said, somewhere where the weather's like Syria. So they sent him to freaking Clarkston, Georgia. And it was like, that's about as close to hot and humid as you can get, man. Like that's where you're gonna be.
Mhm.
But yeah, man, like he's super cool, man. Like one of the most genuine, just good hearted, amazing people I've ever met.
Yeah, I think this falls squarely in the everything happens for a reason. We don't understand it. We'll never understand it, but it
Oh
certainly happened for both of you.
yeah, man, and we both learned a lot from each other, man. We tell a joke like during my time in the movement, I made my money through illegal ways, so I knew how to manufacture methamphetamines, and we were driving to Chapel Hill in North Carolina,
Mhm.
for a talk down, and so like we're in the car for hours, and I think like three like the whole way back was just like me explaining to this cardiologist the process of making meth. And when he gets home, his wife's like, so like what'd you guys talk about? And he was like, well, I learned how to make meth. And she goes, what? And he's like, no. So he told her the story, but that's always a funny story to tell too.
Mhm. And you never know when you might need some meth.
I don't think I'll ever need that ever again in my life, man. you know but it's nice for him to know like some of the stuff that goes into doing it as a heart doctor. Maybe he would be able to use that information to save somebody's life someday.
Mhm. Well, Chris Buckley, we are unfortunately almost out of time.
Yeah.
So
Sucks.
how about we do a quick wrap, and you can tell people how to get a hold of you if they want you and Dr. Kelly to come speak at an event or anything like that.
Yeah, so I'm with an organization now called Serve to Unite. It's an organization that Arno Michaelis, Hardit Kalika, Dr. Kelly, and myself kind of come together and got going again. You can reach me. My email is Chris at serve, SERVE, the number 2, unite.com. And just forward all your requests in there. And I try to get back to things as soon as possible. As soon as I see them, I'm usually pretty quick at responding. So,
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on, Chris. And your story is just fascinating and inspiring. And I hope others find it fascinating or inspiring. You may not be a member of the KKK, but we've all got our demons and our silos that we have to get out of. So take whatever you can from Chris's story and use it to help move your life forward and make the world a better place.
yeah. And one of the things I like to tell people is just like with substance abuse, the saying is we do recover. Same thing with extremist ideology. With the right people in network, we do recover. So be the strength and the pillar of support for those that are in need around you.
Excellent, excellent. So to everybody watching and listening, thank you for tuning in to the Dead Man Walking podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like, subscribe, give Chris a call, and see how he can benefit you or people you know. Have yourselves a great week. Thanks again, Chris.
Yeah, man.
Can you log back in after we get booted off here?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I'll just leave and log back in now.